This is Fred Beck from Fred Talks Fighting. Today, I'm very lucky to joined by once again Kevin Iole. So, Kevin, it's been a while since we last spoke. How have you been?
I've been doing great. A lot of good fights recently. That UFC fight last week was wild with Gaethje and Chandler. Doing pretty good, covering all these great fights.
Yeah, sounds quite good. Getting the events as well. That's pretty cool. I've only just kind of recovered from my lack of sleep on Sunday night. So I woke up. On what I didn't. I missed a Chandler versus Gaethje fight, which I was a bit gutted to hear about, considering it was such a good matchup. But I saw the Canelo fight and also saw Usman Covington. So yeah, but you were working at the fight, so weren't you?
So I did. Actually, normally I'm ringside at the fights. On Saturday night, I was not ringside because I covered both Canelo and the UFC fight. So what I was focused on was I was focused on Canelo's fight and then three UFC fights I had to write stories on. And so my luck, the Namajunas fight, Wiley Zhang Namajunas fight went exactly opposite Canelo. And even worse luck for me, they interviewed Canelo and Rose Namajunas at the exact same time. So I'm sitting there. Now, what do? I got one here that has Canelo on. I got one over here that has Rose on. And I was so I figured in that case, I figured the UFC was going to get more traffic on most of the fights, but on that particular fight, especially Canelo against Rose, I thought Canelo would be the bigger one. So I paid attention to Canelo's, and then I got Rose later. So it was a little bit tough, but it was fun. It's cool to do that, and that puts pressure on you. It reminds me back in my days when I had deadline on newspapers.
Comes back flashbacks then from when you had to do a newspaper work. But could you not pause one of those videos? So I'm sure on the BT Sport thing, I could have paused the interview and gone back to it so you could get both interviews.
Yeah, I had it on stream on ESPN Plus, and they don't let you, at least that I'm not aware of. I don't think you can pause it. So that was where I had trouble with it. But maybe it's just my lack of tech skill. I don't know. Maybe I could have done that. But if I could have paused it, I would. But it was like I was hoping that there would be a little bit of a difference, like that Canelo would have been a couple minutes earlier and then he finished and Rose would have gone. But still, it was fun, and it turned out to be a pretty good day.
Yeah, it certainly did. It's definitely a good night of fights. You could have gone and sat next to Dana White because he was also watching the Canelo plant fight.
Yeah, well, he had $100,000 bet on Canelo, so he had a reason. He wasn't watching it just because he was a fan and preferred to watch boxing over UFC. He had a $100,000 bet on Canelo by TKO.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's quite brave to put on TKO. I mean, if you put on decision, I guess you're what's the word? You're more comfortable. You're a lot more comfortable if you put it on the decision. But if you're on TKO, it's risky because Plant's quite a slippy fighter. But how much did he win? Was it 40 grand he won then?
Yeah, 40, I think it was 41,000. And like I wrote in my betting column, there's really no way, Fred, that you could bet Canelo to win because you're going to lay what was it? I think it was 10 to 1 or more, and you can't lay that kind of money. I mean, you're just making nothing, and it's too big of a risk because you never know what the judges are going to do, right? So I recommended a play on Canelo by knockout at -190, and I thought that was not bad because at least you're getting kind of reasonable numbers there. But yeah, Dana is a gambler. There's no doubt about that.
Did you bet on the fight at all? Do you ever bet on any fights?
I never bet the fights. I make picks because, we have a partnership with MGM and there's a lot of interest in betting. And so I make picks on the fights, and I've been doing pretty good on my picks. But, to me, it's a conflict of interest. If I'm sitting there with a bet on a fight and, I might start rooting for one guy over the other. And even though I'm a columnist and I'm allowed to give my opinion, I kind of feel like I want my opinion to be 100% just what I saw and not the fact that I have financial interest vested in it, right? And if I'm not like Dana White. He's betting 100,000. I might bet 100 if I bet, but even still, like $100, I'm going to be going, and it's going to affect the way I see the fight. So I just want to, whether you would agree or disagree with what I write, it's my opinion and nobody else's, and it's based on what I saw, and that's why I don't bet.
Yeah, I can understand. It could cause some bias in your mind, maybe. Let's just start on the first fight that kicked off the pay-per-view between Justin Gaethje and Michael Chandler. Do you think it was not ruined it at all, but do you think how much better do you think it would have been if it had been 5 rounds, even though it wasn't a crazy good fight in 3 rounds, considering it could have been because maybe Nate Diaz did 5 rounds, so why couldn't they do 5 rounds?
Yeah, I think the UFC basically makes title fights and all main events 5-rounders. And in order to get Nate and Nick on the to fight on the cards, they made that exception. I wish it. In fact, you might have seen my tweet during the show. I said, "You screwed up, Dana White. This should have been a 5-rounder." But having said that, honest to God, I mean, I don't want to see them start doing that all the time, because it takes the special meaning of a 5-round fight away. A 5-round fight's telling us, hey, this is really significant. Now, I loved Gaethje Chandler, and it was one of the best fights I've seen in a long time. So in the moment, I'm going, yeah, I want to see this. But you know what? They knew going in what it was. And I think, in a way it was a better fight, because they knew they had to get it done quick, and they went at it. You have 25 minutes, not that, those two guys are crazy. And so, they're going to go at it. But I think, that I want to keep the special nature of, we have 3-round fights, and then in only in special situations, championship fights or a main event, do we see it go up to a 5-rounder.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I can see what you mean. Normally, if it's going 5 rounds, there might be a kind of sort of feeling out process. But those two fighters, I don't think even if they are going 5 rounds, I don't think there'll be kind of any sort of feeling out process. So if we just also touched on the main event, Kamaru Usman, Kobe Covington, the rematch. Did the fight go as you expected?
Pretty much did. I was a little surprised that Covington did as well as he did. I thought, I had predicted it to go to a decision. And the last time, of course, we know it was a knockout. So that was one of my bet picks that I gave out. I picked Usman to win, and I actually had 2 units on Usman. And then I had picked the fight to go to a decision, because I figured Colby, would figure out what he had done wrong in that last fight and fix it. But I didn't think he was going to be, as offensive as he was, and I thought Usman would be more dominant. And, hey, after Colby got hurt at the end of the 1 round, he comes out in the next round and he hurt Usman. So, the fight largely played out the way I thought it would. But I was a little bit surprised by the fact that Colby did as well as he did.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Colby nearly got finished. Well, I can't remember which round it was. Was it round 2 or round 3? Usman nearly got him out of there.
Yeah, I think he got him at the end of round 2, and then the round 3 is when Colby came back and had a good round, and he buzzed Usman at one point.
Did you think that Colby got the takedown on Usman?
It's funny. I saw everybody was getting all worked up about that on Twitter, I guess, because Usman's never been taken down. And I don't know if you saw the UFC's explanation for why it wasn't a takedown, because you have to follow it with some control afterwards, and he didn't do that. So in wrestling, by wrestling rules, it was a takedown. By MMA statistical rules, it was not a takedown. To me, I look like, hey, it looked like a takedown to me. That's kind of what I thought. But I understand what the rule is and why they applied it the way they did.
Yeah, that is crazy. No one's ever taken the Usman down in the UFC. That is quite a good stat to hold. Yeah. So if we just stay on Usman just for a bit, do you see anyone causing him any trouble now?
I don't really think there's going to be too much trouble for him. Khamzat Chimaev might be the only guy. And Usman is so damn good. I mean, what doesn't he have? He's got power. He's a good boxer. He's, obviously we're talking about nobody's ever taken him down. So he's got elite level wrestling. He's got great cardio. He's quick, and he's also smart. He has that, sense of how to adjust in the ring and what works and what doesn't work. And, there's some guys that go back to the corner and the corner says, hey, do X, Y, and Z, and they can do that. Usman, if he's in a fight, and this in the second, minute of the fight, and he says, "Oh, what I'm trying," he can adjust on his own, and that's one of the things that greats have. So I just think he's so much better than everybody else that if he loses, I hate to say any loss would be a fluke, but like, I think, if he happens to make, like if he slips and gets caught with a punch, maybe he loses that way. But I don't think you're going to see anybody beat him, go out there and win rounds against him and either beat a decision or knock him out. I just, and when I say that, I don't mean, just a one punch, like, he caught him with a shot. I mean, you're breaking him down the whole fight, and then later you drop him and finish him. I don't think you're going to see anybody at 170 do that to Usman. Chimaev, I would like to see that fight at some point. Obviously he hasn't fought anybody remotely close to Usman yet. There's a big gap from Li Jingliang to Kamaru Usman. I think Chimaev is an awesome fighter. I'm just not so sure that he's ready for Kamaru yet.
Do you think it's fair to say, because you can't really spot many weaknesses in Usman, and neither in Canelo either? Do you think it's fair to say that Usman is the Canelo of the UFC?
Yes, I do. Except that, when we think about Canelo, he's the whole package. He's a big draw. He sells tickets, he sells pay-per-views, and, he's a great fighter. Usman is not necessarily a big pay-per-view draw, right? Now, he's not a bad draw, but he's not like a guy that, if you put Usman on the card against me or you, people probably aren't going to buy it, right? Now you put him on against Colby Covington and people are into it. Canelo, I think, could sell it against me or you. People just love watching Canelo fight. And that's the difference. But I think from a fighting technical standpoint, yeah, I think it's fair to say, he's dominant like Canelo. He's, they're both on similar paths, because you look at Canelo and he's fighting he's taking challenges, he's fighting all the other champions, all these, top level guys, and he's done that throughout his career. And Usman on his side, who is it that he should have fought that he hasn't fought yet? I think he's done great work.
Yeah, certainly. And what did you make of I know Dana White addressed it in the post-fight press conference, but what did you make of Usman kind of calling out Canelo?
I don't like those fights, and and I don't like all this crazy stuff that we're seeing come up now that Triller's doing and whatnot with the boxers versus MMA fighters, because here's what we know: if they're similar level fighters, if they fight in a boxing match, the boxer's going to win, and if they fight in an MMA match, the MMA fighter is going to win. Now, you can find exceptions to that, like if the fighters are, you have a terrible boxer and a really good MMA fighter, or vice versa. Then it's going to be different. But so what are we proving? If Canelo fought Usman in MMA, he would lose in a minute or less. And if, Usman boxed Canelo, Canelo would box his ears off and finish him. What is the point of that? I don't get it. Like, I don't understand why people want to see that. They're different sports. They're similar, but they're different.
Well, Canelo did say he wants a payday, though, didn't he?
Usman made pretty good. So, that's Canelo's way of saying, I don't want to pay any attention.
Yeah, I bet Usman did earn quite a bit for that fight. Yeah, so just moving on to Canelo, I know you haven't got a huge amount of time, but we just got on Canelo's plan. How big is it? How good is it for boxing that we see another undisputed champion for the second time this year? Obviously, Josh Taylor being the first one.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And I thought we were going to have a couple more, and I guess I consider Teofimo Lopez undisputed. He went into the fight with the WBC belt. He won the other belts, and now some people aren't saying he's undisputed. I don't understand where that is, but he's a champion of all four, organizations. And then we almost had the heavyweight, Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua were signed to fight each other, and if it wasn't for a arbitration ruling, they would have fought. I think it's good for boxing, but I think it can't be just a one-time thing. It's got to be a regular occurrence, and we don't have to have all 17 weight classes unified, but you want to have a lot of them, and you want to have, a number of undisputed champions. And then you'd like to have, in other divisions where it's not undisputed, where you have a guy that people recognize as the champ. There's too many weight classes where you go in and there's four guys that have belts and you're not really sure who the best one is. And I think when you have champion versus champion fights and you have undisputed title fights, it creates more interest. And that's why MMA, and especially UFC, they, with rare exceptions, they follow their rankings and they make the fights on the undercard mean something, right? So that when we see guys coming up and you say, oh, whoever it may be, whatever fighter, division you want to talk about, Chandler and Gaethje is a great example. Okay. Chandler is number 5, Gaethje's number 2. Gaethje wins a good fight against number 5. Hey, he deserves to fight for the title. And now the public is now anticipating that. But you look at the Canelo undercard, who the hell is anticipating seeing Canelo fight Anthony Durrell? Nobody, other than Durrell and his accountant, nobody cares. And, they don't put fights on, but, if they would have thought, hey, let's build guys up. So that's the problem that, you have in boxing. So if you could start addressing it by, let's try to have more unified fights, then all of a sudden, boxing is a tremendous sport when it's done right. It's just so often, it's not presented correctly, and everybody's in it for themselves as opposed to for the good of the sport.
Yeah, so often. The saying's used quite a lot of times that it's a business disguised as a sport. A lot of people do say that. Just regarding the Teofimo Lopez, what happened was Lomachenko was upgraded to franchise champion, and then I think Devin Haney was his manager, and they upgraded Devin to become world champion. So I can kind of see what you mean, but then technically Devin Haney is the world champion. But do you see?
But I'll tell you this now: before the Lomachenko fight, right before Lomachenko and Lopez, I was doing an interview with Mauricio Sulaiman of the WBC, and there was Lance Pugmire, who was of the Athletic. He was on. Dan Raphael was on there. There was about 4 or 5 of us were talking. I think Dylan Hernandez from the Los Angeles Times. And I specifically asked Mauricio, I said, the winner of this fight, who is the WBC champion? And he said, whoever wins this fight is the WBC champion. I said, what about Devin Haney? He said, the winner of this fight is the WBC champion.
Oh, really? So, I didn't know that then.
So he said that, and you could probably find the video somewhere. It was a couple days before Lopez and Lomachenko. It was a WBC sponsored, not sponsored, but they ran the video and they invited a bunch of writers on. And you can find it and you can see where he said that. So to my way of thinking, that means he's undisputed. And then he moved up to franchise, and now Haney comes in to get the WBC regular. I hate all that garbage, and that's something that's got to change. And the WBC is usually pretty good about that. The WBA is the one that's terrible, but in this case, the WBC is gumming up the works.
All the WBC should do is just order them to fight each other. That's what they should really do. Because you've got so much confusion about all the franchise champions. I think the Devin Haney will fight Lopez after he fights Kambosos, if he gets past Kambosos. I've just got one more point. Before I take too much of time up. But obviously you got the fight coming up between Tommy Fury and Jake Paul. I know you're not mad on these kind of YouTubers boxing, but what are your thoughts on that matchup? Because that is actually quite a good fight, a good 50-50 fight.
What fight? You broke up a little bit. Which fight did you say?
Well, what are your thoughts on Jake Paul versus Tommy Fury?
I hate it. Like, I don't mind the fact that Jake Paul's trying to get into boxing, right? And I guess Tommy Fury is now more appropriate level boxer for him than, Tommy Fury's a low level boxer. Jake Paul is a low level boxer. Both guys are trying to move up. So I guess from that standpoint, God bless him. And I'm happy for the guys making the money, but like, I feel bad, there's a lot of fighters who have worked all their lives to get to this point, and they're being overshadowed by somebody who's not really a boxer. If Jake Paul said, I'm going to fight nothing but boxers here on and appropriate for my skill level, then God bless him. I'm in with him, and I give him all the attention he wants because, he's earned that. His work on YouTube and his work on other platforms has earned him the attention. He's built fans. That's great. That's what boxers need to learn how to do. And so he's earned that. But I don't like the fact that he's, going out there and he's, fighting NBA players and, MMA fighters and all this stuff, and then trying to call himself a real boxer. If you want to be a real boxer, God bless you. You're fighting Tommy Fury now. Let's start, and then let's go. If you win that, let's go with appropriate level fights. Let's not go out there and try to, give me these crazy matches anymore.
Do you think he can beat Tommy though? How do you see the fight kind of playing out?
It's hard for me to believe that Jake Paul would sign up for a fight that his trainer, who's pretty smart, BJ Flores, didn't think he could win. I think that BJ Flores, believes that Jake Paul has some talent, and they think that they can milk this cash cow for a long while, right? And so if they thought that, Tommy Fury had, 1/10 of the talent that Tyson Fury has, I think he'd be fighting somebody else. That's really what I think. But I think that, they created this phony rivalry between them. First it was the, sparring partner and Tommy, and now then you saw after the fight when Paul and fought Woodley that night, they pass each other, and isn't it shocking that we had a little incident in the hallway? It's kind of like pro wrestling, right? They're, surprise, surprise, they don't like each other. So my get, like, I haven't seen Tommy fight good enough level boxers to really appropriately judge him. And so the fact that Jake Paul wanted to fight him and has been looking to fight him tells me that they don't think he's very good.
But what do you think, Kevin? How do you see the fight actually playing out though? What's your prediction?
You're not going to put this online, right? Because I don't want anybody to hear me talking about Jake Paul.
All right, say no comment. Say no comment. Answer.
I'm just kidding you. I think Jake Paul will win the fight. Because I think he's, I think they're smart over there. They know what they're doing, and I think that it's one of those things that they kill the golden goose if they get him knocked out, right? And they're not going to put him in with anybody that's too. You want to have a risk like it's just like, so there's some people that think you might
reward,
lose.
the kind of risk reward thing, you mean?
Right, correct. So you want to go out there and you want, like that's why Tyron Woodley, when he fought Tyron Woodley, they're showing all these knockouts. But Tyron Woodley's knockouts came because people were worried about his wrestling. And then he hit him with a right hand. Tyron Woodley was not breaking guys down as a boxer would break them down. So that, it's different. It's not the same thing. And I equated it, to baseball and softball, where, they're similar sports, but they're not the same. And just because, you're a good hitter in softball doesn't mean you're going to be a good hitter in baseball or vice versa. And there were, in 2000, I think it was at the Olympics, there was a pitcher, fast pitch softball pitcher for the U.S. Her name is Jenny Finch. And she ended up striking out 3 Major League Baseball all-star players. Albert Pujols, A-Rod, and I forget who the third one was, but 3 of the best hitters in Major League Baseball. And she set fast pitch softball. Well, they had, it's not that they couldn't hit her, and not that she was throwing harder than every Major League Baseball pitcher threw. It was, the ball's coming from a different angle. It's, it moves differently, and they had never done that. And that's the same thing with MMA fighters fighting boxers. They're just, they're trained differently, and they set their punches up differently. So, the fact that Jake Paul wanted to fight Tommy Fury, and I look at it and I think Jake knows, that he's like here. So, if Jake fights a good fight, he should win. If he doesn't fight a good fight, I think Fury can win.
Yeah, well, that's what's good. No one's 100% sure he's going to win. That's what kind of boxing needs in a way.
That makes it sell more.
Fights. Exactly, Ken. All right, Ken, I know you're a very busy man, so thanks so much for your time. So where can people find you on social media, Twitter? You got anything coming up you want to shout out?
On Twitter at Kevin I, Kevini, and on Instagram at my name, Kevin Iole, all one word.
Awesome, Kevin. I'm sure we'll catch up soon then. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, mate. Be well.